Hi, welcome back. This is Kimile, and you're listening to Heal with Kimile podcast. I want to talk about the dangers of staying in a codependent relationship for too long. I think codependent relationships can ultimately kill people, and I've seen it in so many couples that I deal with in my practice. A few people I'm dealing with right now are going through massive trauma when the person they've loved for 25 years is betraying them. And they can't seem to see a future without this person. So it's difficult. I understand 5 children, 25 years in, they have a business together. There's so many things that their worlds are so entangled, very enmeshed. Everything is together with each other. And they really have been inseparable for 25 years. But when you've got a partnership that starts becoming someone you don't recognize, it is time for you to force yourself to pause, take a step backward, and reassess. Sometimes people go through midlife crisis, and it certainly hits, I think, people that have been in a rut for a long time around the age 38. And there's some, patterns people can track, and around 38 to 42 is the average length of time when people do go through midlife crisis. But if you've been a housewife for a long time and you never had a career, or you've stayed at the same job for a long period of time, you kind of hit a point, mid-30s, late 30s, where you're ready for change. You need change. It's kind of like something inside of you says, I've got to be me, whatever that means. And whether that's a new career, whether that's a new relationship, whether that's traveling, going to college at that age, something usually happens around mid to late 30s where people that have been in this kind of a routine or a rut need a breather. They need a break. And if you can catch this in time, if you can kind of know that you're starting to go through some feeling changes, you're starting to realize that there's something more to you and you want to have a different expression of yourself in life instead of just being a mom or just being their career person, etc. If you can catch that before it really hits, you can maybe prevent a train wreck of a divorce and taking your kids through hell and everything. But sometimes when you're so codependent with this person and you're in a long-term relationship like this one couple I'm working with, 25 years in, they've got everything entangled and 5 children. You really have to see if you can stop the trauma. So this couple has gone through a massive betrayal. They break up, they get back together. They break up, they get back together. And that kind of instability is really damaging to the kids because they don't know what to count on anymore. And at some point, a divorce needs to happen, or a permanent separation, at least for a few years, needs to happen, even if they don't want to get divorced, just to normalize or stabilize them both. So when you're with someone that does betray you, or they start drinking, or they start doing drugs, or they go through something like a self-destructive cycle, and you don't recognize them, they start hanging out with people they would have never hung out with. They start traveling or doing things that they would have never done before, and they don't seem to care that it bothers you. But yet you don't want a divorce. You're the one that doesn't want to end this. You're trying to hold it together. You're trying to piece it together. And then you take them back. You kind of get upset, you fight, you break up, but then you take them back because you love them so much, or you can't imagine the future without them. You're part of the problem because you're not demanding that there's some sort of boundary for you. And look, I'm not saying this is easy because 25 years is a long time and you can't imagine your life without that spouse or person. But truly, if you don't stop the chaos, that chaos is going to eat you alive. And I have seen longer marriages, 50, 40-year marriages, when one partner decides to breach, their trust and do some crazy things that actually led to a murder-suicide. So I do feel like if you're in a codependent relationship, it can be deadly. If you can't pull back and regroup and start over yourself, you're going to go down that, off the edge of the cliff with that person. Sometimes these cycles last 8 years. Sometimes they last 2. It depends on what that person is really seeking, and they're trying to find a new expression for themselves. I say people that start going through midlife crisis need to see a therapist immediately, a counselor immediately, because they are about ready to lose everything they put their whole world into. And at the end of this midlife energy, people regret. I've never met someone that didn't go through this that didn't regret taking their family with them, So what are the signs if your spouse if they're cheating, if they're doing something crazy? What do you do? How do you handle that? You love them. You don't want to leave them. You don't want to divorce. You don't want to break up. You don't want your kids to go through that. You want that person to stay the same, but they're not going to stay the same. They haven't stayed the same. They've already breached the trust. What do? You have to end it. You have to pull back, stop the action, so to speak, right? It's kind of like if you have an animal and they pee on the carpet. You don't just keep allowing that. They've got to learn. So they're, taken outside. They're retrained. You have to stop the action and you have to pull back. And this is when you want to seek some professional help. And I think you want to listen to your professional counselors because you're not likely to be able to follow through alone. If you've had a long-term relationship and you're very codependent and you just didn't see this coming, it is traumatizing. It is shocking. When your longtime partner does something radical, crazy, if you don't pull out of this and start and let them kind of hit a bottom, whatever that is for them, you're going to go down and your kids will go down, your money drops. Everything seems to fall apart. It's a domino effect. So if you're with someone that does breach your trust, as soon as that happens, I don't care who it is, if it's a business partner, if it's a wife or a husband, you must stop the action, pull away, demand some sort of a separation, deal with it promptly, and don't let them continue to come back and forth because they cry and they don't know what's wrong with them. And you've got to get them some help. And if they want help, great. But if they keep self-destructing, you can't go down with them. You've got to have a boundary. You've got to say no. Again, you can help them find counselors. You can help them get to doctors, whatever they need to do. But if they're about ready to blow your life up, you need to protect yourself. And if you're codependent, you can't. That's where the danger is. You need to have some boundaries for yourself. You need to have some self-care. And if you're the primary caregiver of children too, you have to put them first, not your partner that just betrayed you, that just went off the deep end, so to speak. And look, I'm not saying that they're going off the deep end because they mean to or they intend to. They could have a brain tumor. I don't know. But the principle is that if you're codependent, you need to maintain some boundaries and control over yourself. And if you sacrifice, and most people do, you love your spouse, you'll sacrifice yourself for them. You'll take them back and you'll live with the wound. You'll deal with the mistrust. But if you're doing that and that person isn't changing, if they keep doing the same behavior, you're only going to get resentful. You're only going to feel worse about yourself because you really aren't understanding the full picture of what's happening. And it probably has nothing to do with you, frankly. It most likely does not have something to do with you. That person needs a whole new cycle in their life. And that's what they're screaming for. But how they're going about it, it's like they've hit a wall. And whatever that wall is, they just can't go forward. Well, then they need to get some help. And maybe you can't be the one helping them. I'm just experiencing some clients going through this. And, this one situation where the wife breached the trust of the husband. She's had an affair. And so she left. And then she comes back. He takes her back, which is definitely a sign of weakness on his part. And, I hate to say it. I know he loves her. But he's the more understanding one. He understands what she's going through. Does he really? He thinks he understands her and oh, he's just going to have to change and he'll be better at this and he'll be better at that. And I say, now you're bargaining. This is you bargaining because you really don't want the end. You don't want the end to come. So you're desperate to hang on to the life you knew, the life you know, the person you knew. You're desperate to hang on to this and you don't want to start over. And so you're preventing your own growth and you're preventing your own bottom and the end of this relationship because you're terrified to start over. You're terrified to start over. But if you hang on too long, again, it's going to take you down. It's going to take your family down and people around you down. And this person is more likely to maybe pop out of what they're going through if you don't continue to enable and go along for the ride. See, enablers, they've got a problem. Enablers have a problem. They don't want to be alone. They want to keep the thing going. They want to keep the love going, keep the cycle going so they don't have to face themselves. So they'll enable you maybe to keep drinking or to, cheat and come back and something like that. Because again, they don't have to face what they are going to face when this relationship ends, which might be that they sold out or they've been pretending to be okay with something they weren't okay with. They aren't taking care of themselves. They're not self-caring. They're not managing themselves. They're not independent. They're broken without you. It's almost like I would rather you do anything to me. Just don't end it. Just don't leave me. So this is a pretty desperate, dark situation. So what you want to kind of have, and I hate to say live, don't trust your partner and live with, one eye open, but just know that around mid-30s, early 40s is when people tend to go through these cycles of need for something new, need for some change. There's a lot of couples in Utah that get married in their early 20s. And so they've already had children, they're done with having their kids. And you've got a mom that's been a mom for a long period of time. And so mid-30s, she's like, I want to have a career. I want to do something. I want to change. I need a new expression of myself. That should be allowed to happen. That should be something that's, encouraged. Because if she doesn't get some sort of new expression, she's going to hit the wall typically. But a young couple that are going through quite a trauma, I feel like when this stuff starts happening inside of a relationship, if you stop the action, you pull away, you demand that person, get some help or something, because they can't stay with you. You're not going to allow that to fester and that wound to linger. If you don't do that and you take them back over and over and over, at some point, when does that end? How far down will they take you? How much pain can you handle? And what's been happening with this one gentleman who's dealing with his wife and 5 kids is he's come to therapy. He's been working on himself. It has taken him 3 months to literally absorb the impact of the betrayal. And the betrayal happened a year ago. They break up, they got back together. He knows how a divorce is going to go. He's had the reality of talking to a lawyer and things like this. But it's just such a shock. It just reverberates, and it's taken him this long to really fully be able to embrace it and process it and absorb some of the impact of this, because it was so traumatic for him. He never, ever thought in his wildest dreams that this would be their story. They were high school sweethearts. She's all he's ever known. He's all she's ever known until the affair. And so this kind of thing has just rocked his world to the point of, do I want to live? Well, you got 5 kids, so you have a reason to live, and you should want to live for yourself. However, it's something he's had to really grapple with. And then just the possibility of a future without her, that's something he could not even, he couldn't even comprehend that until this last week's session, where he's looking at designing a future that may not include her. The thing about some of these people that they breach the trust or they cheat or something, they don't see that anything's wrong here. She's in denial. She denies it now. So she's not even owning it, right? She's acting like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. So now it's gaslight moments. But she moved everything. She moved everything out of the house, actually. When he was on a trip and came back, he had nothing but the bed in his own home. Again, 25 years of life, 5 kids, everything gone. And then now she's come back. So there's just a lot of crazy stuff, but you have to know what you're dealing with. And if it is a midlife crisis and you're codependent, you're going to not make it if you can't pull apart from that person. And sometimes that codependency, it does create this, the dependency that we have contempt for. We do have contempt for that which we have dependency for. So women that are not working and they're dependent upon their husbands, they kind of tend to get maybe a little resentful of them. So this relationship, they've got back together, she's there, and now she's minimizing, pretending it didn't really happen like it did. And he's trying to resolve. He's trying to understand, what happened? Why would you do that? What's going on? Is it something I did? Of course, people in these codependent relationships, they want to know how it's their fault. And it really isn't their fault, but it's something that she's got to go through. And she's not going to be able to explain it either. This is just kind of a phenomenon. It's kind of weird. But it's also a reality check for her, because I think when she left, and again, you hit the wall, midlife crisis, I want out. And so you're impulsive about stuff. And I can't even say the affair is love. It's like an opportunity for her to get out of this situation or the feeling that she's in, So she's stuck in this relationship, doesn't have a future, doesn't have a career. She feels like she's, desperate for a new experience. Oh, this guy says, let's do that. She follows in. She falls in line with another guy. Now she's dependent upon him, ironically enough, right? So that didn't work out because he's not ready for a marriage. He doesn't want a wife. He just wanted to love her for a month or something. And then she comes back to her husband. And now he's in a quandary. What do I do? Do I keep her? Do I divorce her? Can I let this go? Can I forgive her? Can I work through it? She's not willing to come to counseling. So that's going to be a hard ask, right? That's not going to happen if she doesn't come to counseling. She's not willing to process why. She doesn't want to look at her issues. She wants him just to forget it, like she's forgetting it and move forward. And she's blaming him for it. Somehow it's his fault, right? So I think some of these people are also kind of immature. They haven't done a lot of schooling, and they just, they're just not looking at themselves and not accountable. That's usually the kind of person that has low self-esteem that would receive a bid for an affair, if they're hitting that wall. So these codependent relationships that people find themselves in can be deadly. They can be dangerous. And if you are in a codependent relationship and you really are having a hard time getting out, I would be happy to talk to you about that. If you've got a partner that's going through a midlife crisis and you know it and you can't help them, you don't know what to do, you're feeling helpless and powerless, I would be happy to help you with that. So you can find me, reach out to me on my website, healwithkimile.com. That's healwithkimile.com. Thanks.